Hello and welcome to another episode of Issuer Update Clips. I'm Dimitri Giller, and joining me today is Vishal Gupta, President and CEO of Caprock Mining Corp, ticker symbol CAPR on the CSE. Vishal, welcome.
Dimitri, thank you very much for having me here.
Fantastic. And before we start, just a quick congratulations on your 3-year milestone that you celebrated in January.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So let's kick it off. Can you start by giving us a brief description and overview of Caprock Mining Corp and its core focus?
Sure. Caprock is a junior exploration company based in Canada. We trade on the Canadian Securities Exchange. As you mentioned, our ticker symbol is CAPR. And it's really a startup company where we have just very recently acquired a very exciting gold exploration property in Quebec, which in my books is probably the world's best mining jurisdiction.
Great. So I've noticed Caprock recently shifted its focus to precious metals in Quebec. As you mentioned, what led to this strategic decision?
Well, when we're looking at the gold market from a macroeconomic perspective, we could not be in a better position in terms of where the gold market is headed next. The next 7 to 10 years promise to be fantastic for gold explorers, developers, producers. You can see the commodity price has already taken off, and we wanted to position ourselves with an asset where we could ride that wave for the next 7 to 10 years, doing proper exploration, development, and production, hopefully production in the next 7 to 10.
Great. And what makes this particular region such an exciting gold project for Caprock?
Well, this particular property is located in a gold deformation zone, which is, by all metrics, is the heart of the gold district in Quebec. So when we acquired Destiny, one of the things that really caught our eye is that we are surrounded by some of the largest gold producing development and exploration stage projects in and around that Rouyn-Noranda, Val-d'Or area. There's some major deformation faults that are running through the region, the famous Porcupine-Dester Fault Zone, the Cadillac-Larder Lake Fault Zone, the Casa Berardi Fault Zone. And on those fault zones, you've got dozens of, some of the highest grade and some of the largest gold projects in the world sitting on those fault zones. So the Destiny project is basically squished in between this major deformation corridor that is running through the heart of Quebec.
Right. So speaking of the geological setting, can you talk a little bit more about the potential there?
Well, it's very exciting, and this is where the meat and bones of Destiny come through. What we see over here is the classic Abitibi Greenstone Belt setting from a regional geology perspective, and you've got a shear zone. It's called the Despenassi Shear Zone that is running through a 6-kilometer strike of this property that we have, and this 6-kilometer strike, has not been very well explored. There's been sporadic exploration that's been done across the 6-kilometer strike, but already what we see is that there is a resource that was generated in 2011 on less than 1 kilometer of the strike, and on the remaining 5 kilometers, there are 4 additional zones that have been already identified using exploratory drill holes.
So speaking of the Destiny project, it has a historical mineral resource estimate. So what steps are needed to bring it to current standards?
So not a lot is required. As I mentioned before, this project has a 2011 mineral resource estimate that was 43-101 compliant at the time that was put together. At the time, the gold price was $973 an ounce. So you can imagine with a much higher gold price that you would potentially put on a new updated resource estimate, taking into context the current gold price environment, the resource could potentially be significantly larger. The other thing is that there were approximately 10,000 meters of drill holes that were put into this project in 2020, 2021 that were never incorporated into an updated resource estimate. So what we have done is we've gone back to the same qualified person, the same independent qualified person. His name is Todd McCracken, a very well-known QP in the resource estimation space. He works for a world-renowned resource estimation firm called BBA ENC. And so we have engaged BBA ENC to complete an updated resource estimate on the Destiny project that will obviously be done in the context of the current gold price and the gold environment, and will also incorporate the additional 10,000 meters of drilling that was never incorporated before, that was done in 2020, 2021.
Great. And speaking of the exploration work that's planned in the near term, can you talk a little bit about the schedule that's expected for this project?
Absolutely. So our goal here is by the end of February, just around the time of PDAC, the big mining convention in Toronto, we're expecting our mineral resource estimate statement to be released by BBA. That will be a very exciting time because that just brings the historical resource into a current 43101 compliant category. And the expectation is once we see what the numbers for that resource zone show, as I mentioned to you before, that resource is going to be sitting on pretty much about 1 kilometer of the total 6-kilometer strike of the shear zone that runs through our property. There's another 5 kilometers of strike on which 4 additional zones, mineralized zones, have been identified through previous exploration drilling. And so our aim for the next 12 to 24 months would be to significantly expand that initial resource that we will be putting out in the next month by adding more resources in those 4 additional zones that have already been identified on the property.
Great. And shifting gears a little bit, you touched on the gold prices. So since your last estimate, gold prices have risen significantly. How does this current market environment impact the project's economics overall?
Well, there's the gold sector. There's a bit of a dichotomy right now. So there's the senior gold producers that are directly levered to the price of gold, and those senior producing companies are reporting record EBITDA, record net earnings because they're selling the production, the gold production at record prices. But when you see in the junior gold space that influx of capital on the senior side has not flowed down into the junior gold space yet, and that potentially is because there has been a bit of a credit crunch in the North American capital markets. Interest rates were high for quite some time because of which liquidity has gone out of the capital markets. But we're seeing, obviously, with interest rate cuts happening, north of the border here in Canada, and then slowly happening in the US as well, what we're seeing is that the liquidity will start to come back into the Canadian capital markets and the US capital markets. And as soon as that happens, we will see that trickle-down effect of the high commodity prices enter into the junior gold space as well. So from the perspective of Caprock Mining, we believe we have acquired this asset, we have optioned this asset at the absolute right time, just on the cusp of when this upleg in the gold industry, especially for the junior space, is about to take off.
Right. And speaking of the gold exploration industry specifically, it is highly competitive, as you mentioned. So what gives Caprock an edge over other junior mining companies?
Well, when before we actually acquired this Destiny project, before we optioned the Destiny project, we did a comparables table to see, other companies that have assets similar to ours, similar sort of grade, similar sort of size in Quebec and surrounding areas like Ontario and potentially a similar jurisdiction like Newfoundland. What are the trading multiples for those companies, and a broad sweep of the junior gold exploration space showed us that companies that have similar assets to ours trade somewhere between $10 and $20 per ounce in the ground. And what we are trading at right now, obviously depends on what the upcoming mineral resource estimate is going to show. What we are trading at right now is potentially $3 to $4 per ounce in the ground. And so there is a huge upside as soon as that resource estimate comes through in the next month or so. We believe that there's a huge upside for Caprock's shareholders to realize, filling that gap up to where our peers are trading today.
Great. Okay, let's take a step back and talk about the future outlook. So what major milestones should investors be looking out for in 2025?
Milestone number one, we're going to be coming out with that mineral resource estimate, and that should happen in the next month or so. 45 days after that, we're going to have BBA ENC is going to be releasing the NI 43-101 technical report that accompanies the mineral resource estimate. They typically have 45 days to come up with the report or to publish the report after the mineral resource estimate statement has been released. So sometime in March, maybe early April, we will expect that report to be released. And then once we have the report, obviously we will have a recommendation section in there that will talk about what was found and what is yet to be found on the property. We've been doing a lot of work internally as well to figure out exactly where the next set of drill holes should go so that we can substantially increase the resource inventory on the Destiny project. And so 2025, the summer and the fall of 2025, we expect that to be a very busy time for Caprock. We're going to be actively exploring and doing definition drilling to add to those resources by drilling those 4 additional zones that were identified on the remaining 5 kilometers of strike outside of the resource zone.
Okay, great. Let's zoom up a little bit more. Where do you see Caprock in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, if we found 2.5, 3 million ounces of gold, and this is obviously all hypothetical, and our location was Nunavut, it's hard to see. It's hard to see a junior company getting a lot of traction with 2 to 3 million ounces of gold in a far-flung area like that. But because we, as I mentioned to you in the beginning of this interview, that we are in the heart of Quebec's gold sector, we are right in that corridor where some of the largest producing and development gold projects are located in Quebec. We believe 2 to 3 million ounces gets us a long way. And so both in terms of potential M&A action, also in terms of valuation, we believe 2 to 3 million ounces, if we can get there, if we can actually demonstrate that kind of potential on our property, then I think that would go a long way. So that would be our aim for the next 2 to 3 years, to systematically explore and build resources on our property that can get us to that 2 to 3 million ounce category, that sort of a range. And the expectation is that the market should respond in this rising gold environment.
Fantastic. Well, Vishal, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Dimitri. Thank you very much for having me here.
And for more information on Caprock Mining Corp, please visit the CSE.com, ticker symbol CAPR. Take care.
Thank you.